What's going on, guys? Today we're going to take a little trip down memory lane. I wanted to make this video because I've been seeing a lot of the comments and a lot of the different stuff going on in the recent videos, and I felt like maybe if we took a little bit of a trip back, you guys would get some better understanding of where the Nova came from, how far it's been, some of the crazy changes that have been made, and why we're doing what we're doing now. I feel like a lot of the folks that are new subscribers, which shout out, we just hit 30,000 subscribers, so thank you guys very much. But a lot of folks maybe have just subscribed within the last couple months and haven't seen the progress of the car in the last year. I wanted to take some time and just kind of go over everything and give you guys an up-to-date understanding of where the Nova has been, the things that I've done with it, the successes and failures, and kind of talk about what I plan to do with it in the future. I think it'll make a lot more sense once we start getting into it. So originally the Nova was never meant to be a race car. Like, I had just bought it because some guy on Facebook said that he had it, and it was like, I don't know, maybe like 800 bucks or something. It was something stupid cheap, and I knew that if I bought it, I was going to be able to make money on it. Like, I could turn around and sell it and it would be fine. And at the time, I had a Mustang that I had just started working on, was racing a little bit, trying to enjoy myself with.
You can call her, they'd be on the phone with them.
No, absolutely. You can't just do that and not like, got a 1, 2, 3, go.
And that was really going to be the game plan. The Mustang was going to be easier to do what I wanted to do in no prep. It was going to be more parts were readily available, all that kind of stuff. So I ended up buying this car that really didn't have any plans with, and that's kind of what started the whole thing. So we got it, we brought it home, it was completely covered in primer. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. You know, the guy had to bring it on the trailer that it was sitting on and drop it off in the driveway just for me to have it, because we couldn't move it onto another trailer. The top end of the motor was taken apart, all that kind of stuff. So around that time, Bill had reached out to me from SRC Garage, Street Racing Channel, and Bill and Billy were planning on doing another movie. They were going to do the Shiners movie. Now, they'd done a movie before that, but they hadn't done, you know, they were going to do a second one. So Bill had convinced me. He said, look, he said, get that thing running and driving. It just needs to run and drive. It doesn't have to be fast. It doesn't have to be anything special. It's got a 350 motor, 350 trans. Put the top end back on it. See if it'll turn over. If it'll turn over, it'll probably run. If it'll probably run long enough to do what we need to do in the movie. But in order for you to do that, it's going to have to look cool. It cannot, you know, it can't keep looking the way it does with the primer. So between myself and Mallory, we spent probably the better part of over 30 hours. And that's how it got to its original gold color. Because when I had taken a little bit of the primer off just to see what was underneath, I had seen the gold color and I was like, man, that's really cool. I want to keep that. So how do we do that? Well, the only way to do that is to sand down the entire body, get all the primer off of it, and get it back to its original color. But you can't just go crazy, because if you sand too much, then you'll sand the gold off too, and then it'll all be a waste of time. So I did some of that work. Mallory did a crap ton of that work of sanding with just a little orbital sander, just in the driveway, getting it done with the little discs, and that was it. So what we ended up doing was taking the parts that were bare metal, and I mixed hydrogen peroxide and salt, and we sprayed it on there, and it rusted instantly. So then after that, we threw some, you know, spray paint can clear coat over it, and Fool's Gold was born. So after we got the body straightened out, I started talking to Billy a little bit, and I was like, you know, it would be really cool to LS swap this Nova. It's not a 68 to 72, kind of like I wanted, but it's a 74, which is close enough. We can always change the front end. We can always do a bunch of stuff to make it more, you know, look more like the Novas that I wanted. But it's a hatchback, so that's pretty cool because there's not a lot of those around. So I said, you know what? I said, if we're going to film this Shiners movie, let's go ahead and LS swap it. So I loaded up and drove to Ohio to spend, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks in Ohio, where we were getting ready to start filming the Shiners movie, but we weren't quite there yet because I wanted to put a set of wheels and tires on the car. I just felt like it would look better, and I wanted it to look good. At this point, we didn't really care about performance or anything else. I just wanted it to look good. So we ended up beating and banging on the fenders and doing all this stuff while, you know, in the quarters.
Everybody who's mad, take a swing with a hammer. It ain't my shit. Ah! Hey! I can't swing. Ain't no
to make some wheels and tires fit, a 28 10.5 fit on the car, and we ended up having to move the shocks. Well, this time we couldn't even move them. We just had to disconnect them completely because we didn't have a new shock mount to weld the rear shocks. So if you ever watched the Shiners movie, there's like scenes where the Nova's driving and it's like bouncing up and down. And I think I got some video clips of Billy in the back, like sitting in the back seat and hitting his head on the ceiling as we're coming down the damn dirt road because there was no shocks in the rear. So we spent some time, you know, getting it right and making sure it was good. Ran and drove. It looked good. Everything. I got to start cruising it around a little bit just to make sure everything was good to go. And then from there, we started filming the Shiners movie. Now, unfortunately, I'm not sure if I ever got a bunch of footage. Maybe we never filmed this or put it out or whatever. But you know, so we do the Shiners movie, and then after that, Billy and I spent the next week LS swapping it in the garage at the house. And we got most of it done. There was some struggle. There was some in and out. You know, I think that's the first time I met Big Rob. He came through, had some headers for me that I needed. So we were able to make those work. That's when we put the manual steering box on it that I had just gotten off of like a Facebook marketplace deal, which now is going bye-bye, but we'll talk about that later. And we got it to the point where it was time for me to go home, but it ran and drove onto the trailer. Now, it wasn't quite done yet. There was some finishing work and, you know, I think the cooling system and that kind of stuff. But as soon as I got it home, I just got right back to work and, you know, made sure that it could run, drive, cooling system, everything was good. And we started testing the LS powered Nova. You know, the first test drive, I have a first test drive video that ended up being, you know, the brakes weren't working right. So I know I ended up fixing brakes. And this is kind of like why I wanted to do this, because I think people don't realize just how much of this car has been touched. There is practically nothing underneath that car or inside that car that hasn't been touched, replaced, replaced again, whatever. So I get it home, and at that time, I'm not even sure if it was at that time yet, but the long story short, I ended up going back out to Ohio and, you know, taking the car back out there. I was able to have some fun with Billy. I'd street race Billy. If you guys remember, that's when he had that purple Nova that he had bought that was just a little beater. And we ended up racing on the street. It was just a fun thing, just somewhere out there having a good time. You know, I took my mom for a ride in the car. Actually, yeah, so we did that. We go out there. I come home, start working on it. I'm able to take my family for a ride, I take my mom for a ride. Everybody's having a good time. But I didn't have the computer software. Well, I had the computer software, but I didn't have the computer cable to change like the rev limiter, the timing, all that. So we didn't know what any of that was. So I end up start messing with that. And then as soon as I get that going, immediately we're going back to Ohio. I take the car back there. I think it was a race at 10 Jim's, a D-team race. And I decided to jump in a hard tire class. I've never raced hard tire before, but I figured I would try it. And at this point, it was just the 5.3 on motor. I think the nitrous plate was on it, but none of that stuff was hooked up yet. And believe it or not, I ended up doing a lot better than I thought I was going to. And I still went out round one, kind of kicking myself, because I knew if I had the nitrous just on a button, I could have hit it at the end, and I probably would have won that race. But you know, I ended up throwing the tires back on, the slicks back on, grudge racing a couple people, having some fun, and the car was really doing pretty well. So from there, we go back and forth. At this time, I'd still been working for JJ the Boss. So if you guys see, like, go through the old videos, you'll see there's JJ the Boss videos. And, you know, I'd still been traveling and working for him. So working on my car in between different, you know, work that I had to get done. And then on top of that, I'm still filming all these different races and sharing footage with Billy and just, you know, just trying to get stuff going. So after coming home from that experience racing with D-Team and racing on hard tire and kicking myself for not having any nitrous, obviously the first thing I immediately did was put nitrous on the car. And that's really where a lot of just trouble started. Just trying to get the car figured out, get it going straight. I think I battled going straight in that car for, I don't know, it felt like a really long time, but it probably wasn't that long. Just kept working at it, kept racing on the street, kept making test passes, just not stopping and keep moving forward to get the car working. During that time, you know, I didn't have a ton of money and all that, so I just kept working on what I could. I was still, I was still flagging for Detroit Hood TV, so I started bringing the car with me when I was flagging and going to these different events, so that way I could race on the street, you know, or I could grudge race in between rounds when I wasn't flagging. And, you know, we ended up even getting on a prep track surface and just trying to go number chasing, and that was a mess. And do all of this stuff, meanwhile just constantly upgrading, never once giving it any more power. You know, we just kind of stayed on the same nitrous shot, same motor, everything. Just continuously trying to upgrade the chassis, the suspension, little by little as I could afford it. But I was continuously racing nonstop. I would go to Ohio, I would go to Michigan. I raced on the street in Ohio, I raced on the street in Detroit, raced on the street at home. You know, just not ever really giving up. And then at some point I ended up destroying the rear gear in the car, and that's when things really started to change, and that was really more in a positive way, because I ended up taking the car over to DNS Fabricators, and they put a new rear gear in it, and we had installed the Caltrax on the car at home in the garage, but they reset them up, and you know, and when they did the rear gear and everything. So when I picked up the car from there, also at that time I had gotten my first brand new set of slicks, shout out to Area 51 Racing. So like there was a lot of good things happening at once. And then I will tell you, as soon as I got back into that car after all of those changes and upgrades, that thing started ripping, and it started going faster than it's ever gone. The 60-foot times were better, you know, the 1/8 mile times were better, the mile an hour was better, the control of the car, you know, it constantly wanted to go right and left and this, that, and the other, and the Caltrax really fixed a lot of that. And so then I was feeling really confident. You know, I kept taking the car out on the road, you know, went back to Detroit Hood TV, raced back at the track. You know, I just grudge raced people in between flagging that event. I came home and they had like a slow guy cash days that I ended up going to the final in. And there's an interesting story about that night, because when we had gotten to the semifinal, we switched spots, and I was lucky enough to draw the bye in the semi. So I knew I was going to final, and I wanted to make, you know, obviously wanted to make a pass on the street because we had changed locations, and I wanted to see what was going on. And I let go of the button, and it just blows the tires off real bad. Now, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know, you know, back then that I know now that would have helped me tremendously. But it was a lot about just tuning and learning the car and what you can do and how you can calm down power and all this kind of other stuff. But when I had come back from the test pass, I was turning, or the buy run, I was turning around and the steering shaft broke. It like stripped off the steering box. So I ended up having to go up, have a conversation with the guy in the finals, get him to agree to a split. He didn't even know what was going on. Meanwhile, I'm not even sure if I can make the final run. The guys are in the back trying to shove new bolts in it, tighten it down, do whatever they can to make sure the steering worked. So I ended up having the finals race. I try to leave on like half throttle, off the brake. In the back of my mind, I'm still worried because I had just made a turn earlier and the steering just disappeared, and I didn't want to do that, going down a sketchy road. I just screwed it all up. I ended up not winning the final. So that kind of is what it is. And then after that, you know, we went out to Dig or Die. Had not a very stellar performance at Dig or Die. You know, I went out round one. And this is like a recurring theme. I go places and go out round one. But the flip side to it too is that I'm going places. Like I'm traveling to places where other racers travel to. So generally you're going to get, you know, higher quality cars, faster racers, more experienced. I've constantly been throwing myself to the wolves, not just, you know, like, oh, I can be the fastest guy within a 5-mile square radius of my hometown and whoever I pick and choose to race and, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, I want to be the best, and the only way to do that is to go out to the races where the people are the best and go race them, and it'll show you your shortcomings, and it'll show you, you know, what you've got to do. We had a little issue at Dig or Die. I ended up shooting out the drain plug out of the oil pan for some strange reason. I think because the oil pan was scraping and it was right there on the edge, and it just either cracked it or it knocked it loose, whatever. So that one gives me a nice loop-de-loop because I'm driving through my own oil. There's not much I can do. And that was kind of the end of Fool's Gold, and that was towards the end of last year. So through that, we decided that, you know, I wanted to get a cage put in the car, an 850 cage. At this point, I've been racing bucket seat, or the factory bench seat, factory seat belt, you know, like completely not really safety related whatsoever. But we also didn't expect the car to end up going as fast as it did. You know, I thought it would be a while before we reached that kind of ET and stuff. So I said, you know what, we definitely got to focus on making this car better all the way around. So did an 850 cage, you know, did the Kirky, did the, you know, the 5-point harness, you know, ordered new front shocks, and just a whole mess of parts. And then that kind of brings us to where I started working on the car. We were originally going to go twin turbo LS with it. That was my game plan. I started putting it together, you know, in between traveling for different work and coming home and trying to get it done, and the process was really pretty slow. And, you know, I had a mess of parts. I had subframe connectors sitting there. I had drive shaft loop sitting there. I had, you know, solid subframe bushings, the aluminum subframe bushings. I had all kinds of stuff piling up. I just could never get the full amount of time and motivation, and, you know, also lack of parts. Like, I live in Delaware. When we're in Ohio, if we need something, we just drop what we're doing, go to Jax, pick it up, and come back. At home, you have to order online, which means you're waiting a couple days. It's going to be a little while. So if you end up needing something in the middle of a project, you've now extended that project every time, 3, 4, 5 days. You know, whereas we can go to Jags 3 times in a week. That 3 times of needing parts would end up costing us 2 weeks of time just on waiting on stuff. So, you know, we started going through the upgrades and trying to get that figured out. And somewhere along the lines, I started looking for a big block. It's actually because it was for Mallory's El Camino. I asked her what she wanted, and Billy had said something about you should do a big block. So I started looking for big blocks, just kind of, you know, looking for like a simple 454 RV motor with a cam, like something we can throw in the El Camino and have some fun with. And a gentleman hit me up, Daniel hit me up, and he said, man, I got this 496. I really want you to have it. You know, it's been sitting on an engine stand in my garage for years. I don't feel like going through the headache of trying to sell it and this, that, and the other. But if you want to come down to Georgia and pick it up, you know, it's yours. So I did what any sane person would do. I took an address from a stranger on the internet, hopped in the truck, and drove 8+ hours to meet somebody I'd never met and pick up a motor. And then from there, you know, I think that's where a lot of you guys and a lot of the new subscribers really started picking up, where we, you know, installed the motor over at SRC Garage. We started going through the troubles, you know, getting everything figured out. And that kind of led us to where we are now. I think one of the important things about where we are now is that, number one, people just don't realize, like, I have street and no prep raced this car across the country for a while already. I have a lot of experience in the car, and as you guys can see from some of these older videos, it never really handled that well to begin with, which is kind of why when I went loop-de-loop in Darlington, like, it looked like I was so calm, because it really just was another ride in Fool's Gold. Like, At this point, I'm used to it not working. So, you know, it just is what it is. But I think there's a lot of parts that maybe we didn't put on video. We've been just so busy working and trying to get the work done itself that we haven't videoed everything. Yes, the subframe connectors are in. Yes, the aluminum subframe bushings are in there. Yes, the anti-roll bar is in there. You know, Lucor did a whole lot of new front steering parts. And then people were like, well, why didn't Lucor, you know, notice the gearbox or this, that, and the other? Well, part of it is because I dropped it off and said I needed it back yesterday. They didn't have time to do everything. We didn't have the parts to do everything. They couldn't do the bump steer kit. They tried. You know, there was an issue with the parts, and you know, I said, well, it doesn't matter. I still got to go racing. And I think what you guys need to understand is that I'm gonna keep going racing. There's as nice as it would be to be able to go to like a track rental, a no prep track rental, back half of the track, and just work on the car all day and figure it out. We don't really have that luxury right now. It's November, it's about to be December, tracks are closed, everything else. The only way I'm going to get more experience in the car and figure it out even more is to just keep racing it. Now, fortunately, I'm lucky enough that, you know, we go to an event and we set up a merch booth, and maybe we sell enough t-shirts and hoodies to cover my entry or maybe some of the gas for the trip. But this is what we do. Like, this is what I do for a living. You know, I own SHITBOXSupply.com. I make videos. I race cars. I sell t-shirts. I do contract work. I do film and video and photography work for other people. So it just is what it is. I'm not going to stop racing the car just because it's not acting right. If you stop racing the car because it's not acting right, you're never going to race the car again. You're just going to get frustrated. You're going to throw it, you know, in the corner, and it is what it is. The reason I keep doing this is because I know we will figure it out. I've already been through this. The car never did what it was supposed to do. It never handled like it did, you know, like it should. And we just kept upgrading and racing and upgrading and trying new things. You know, I can't tell you how many times I adjusted those slapper bars. I bought spacers. I did this, that. We've done it all, and we're going to continue to do it all, because that's how you learn the car. And that's how you get it to do what you want to do. And that's how you get it to become fast and consistent and all of these other things. It also doesn't help that all the races we've been doing lately have been horrible surfaces. You know, the Nova LS on spray has gone faster than the big block has. But I've never put the big block on as good of a road as I have the Nova. So, you know, there's some give and take there. We're going to figure it out eventually. It's not going to stop. I'm just going to keep racing until I can't race anymore. And we're going to keep making videos and hanging out with our friends and doing what we all love to do. Now, talk about what's coming in the future for the Nova. Right now, the Nova's at Lucor. They are putting on a bump steer kit. I bought a new steering gearbox, so they're throwing that on. The 373 rear gear, ring and pinion install kit is all there, so hopefully they'll get to do that. And we're going to take a used set of tires off the Falcon, because I can't keep buying new tires every time I screw some up. So we're going to take a used set of tires off the Falcon, put them on. We've got a new hood. I'm not sure if that's going to be on for dig or die, but what's going to happen is I'm going to go back to Ohio, get the car, hopefully make a rip or two down the street just to kind of get used to it, see what's going on, see how much the steering has changed, see how much the gear has changed. I think the 373 gear is really going to calm it down a lot. I think it's going to be a little bit easier to control. Part of the thing that, you know, people don't, I guess people don't understand, the steering was screwed up in the car, and when you're spinning, there ain't much shit you can do anyway. You're spinning. So if we calm down the launch with the gear, and we calm down the wheel speed and the way it acts, then hopefully it should hook a little better. Because when the car hooks and goes straight, you know, like you've seen in some of these videos, it works. Now I still have to steer it up top. Hopefully that's something the steering gearbox and, you know, the bump steer kit fixes. We've got new front shocks on it that are doing incredible things for the program. You know, the parts are not going to stop. Obviously, there's some changes. You know, the LS weighed a lot less than the big block. So the big block's got a lot more weight up front. We got to do weight bias. That thing is incredibly heavy right now. With me in it, it weighs over 3,700 pounds. Between the car, me, full of fuel, full of nitrous, and weight where we need it, because, you know, the weight bias is off. Now the weight's towards the front, whereas I guess we never scaled it, but I'm assuming this is why it worked so well previously. The weight was actually really, you know, a rear bias when I had the lighter aluminum LS in it. So that's going to be the game plan. New gears, keep testing, keep racing, keep figuring it out. I'm not going to be able to stop. Like, if we stop, we're just going to stop progress, and the car's never going to get there. So yes, it sucks. It sucks to go out and waste money and go out first round. Yes, it sucks to spin the tires and, you know, almost hit a wall. But I'm also not going to hide those things from you, because part of what this was supposed to be was showing you guys at home who maybe want to get into no prep or want to get more competitive in no prep, start traveling, this kind of stuff. I want to show you what it's really like, and this is what it's really like. You know, nobody just comes out the box and is the best racer in the world that has the car all figured out and everything else. I've got some great people around me that can help me and guide me with some things. I have a lot more previous knowledge than I think a lot of folks thought, especially in that car already. And we're just going to keep putting those things to use until the car starts acting right and does what it's supposed to do. So, big thing, I want to thank you guys. The 30,000 subscribers thing is awesome. I love to hit 35,000 by the end of the year. So do whatever you can to make that happen. I get asked this question all the time. People looking for merch and all that. SHITBOXSupply.com. Go there. That's where you can get the merch. That's where you can, you know, pick up the lines and fittings and everything. It's all on that website. I used to have multiple websites. I moved it all to one website. There's definitely going to be some stuff coming up in the future. I want to get back to work on Mallory's El Camino, because that thing needs a motor, and all we've got is a short block right now. So I want to get back to work on that. I want to make that a nice little cruiser. Obviously, in the future, I know I'm going to need a new rear differential, you know, a whole rear for the Nova, and a drive shaft. We're getting away with it right now because the surfaces we were racing on are so crappy that it's doing a lot of spinning and not a lot of hooking. And if it does hook, it's not with a lot of power behind it. So once we start, you know, moving along further and getting it figured out, and then start going to good streets and good no preps, you know, and that kind of stuff, that rear gear or that rear differential and drive shaft are going to show its ass. That's a sorry, Tommy's texting me. How do you get, hey, do you have to grind off? Yeah, yes. So, but we're going to get to work. We're going to keep producing content. I'm going to keep figuring things out. There may be some more story time, because I've got a lot of stories. I don't even think I got to tell the whole story of the Nova in this the way that I wanted to. But more videos are coming, more Nova racing. We're going to keep kicking ass. We will, well, I'm going to say keep kicking ass. We're going to start kicking ass, because we ain't kicking ass right now, but we're going to. So that's coming soon, and thank you guys very much. This story fucking sucks, because I can't remember any of this shit, and the videos don't fucking help me worth a fuck. Check. Hold on. Some of the history of the Nova, and yes, this is shit. Oh, I think, I don't know. I don't know if it was at that point. At some point here, I start street racing the damn thing,